Hello, and welcome to the So You Want to Be a Marine Biologist podcast, where we learn about the ocean, share sea stories, and explore ocean careers. I'm your host, Kara Muzia. Let's dive into today's episode. Hello, mermaids, pirates, ocean lovers, and land lovers. Welcome to today's show. Before we dive in, I want to take a moment to thank those of you who've become patrons of the So You Want to Be a Marine Biologist podcast. A hugely massive thank you to Matt, Kylie, and Bethany. I sincerely appreciate your support. If you have found value in the podcast, I'd like to invite you to head over to patreon.com/marinebiolife to support the show. For less than the price of a dive tank refill or a cup of coffee, you can help to keep the podcast episodes coming. Now, onto today's show. I have a really special guest, and it is my friend Laurie, who I met in college, and we bonded over sea turtles. And so for episode 30, I thought it'd be really fun to bring her on the show to just chat all about sea turtles. So Laurie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I can't wait to talk sea turtles with you.
I kind of want to go into where we bonded over turtles, because it wasn't like we sat in class and passed notes back and forth about sea turtles, right?
No, definitely not.
So do you want to describe the lab that we worked in during our undergrad and what it was all about and some of the responsibilities?
Yeah, so we worked at the FAU's Marine Lab at Gumbo Limbo Nature Center, which is in Boca Raton, under the direction of Dr. Jeanette Weinekin. She was the turtle master. And so what we were doing is gender ratio studies on local turtles that we had in the area, so loggerheads, greens, and leatherbacks, and basically raising them up in the lab. It's one of the only labs in the world that was doing successful and is still doing successful husbandry with leatherbacks, which is really cool. So if you ever have a chance to make it over to Gumbo, be sure to stop into the FAU's Marine Lab and take a look, because there's a lot of cool stuff in there, and you'll get to see all the little turtles on leashes and in baskets and all the cool things going on there. So yeah, that's where Kara and I initially met, working for Dr. Weinekin and just working in the lab. So
yeah. So if anybody's listened to episode 4 with Boris Hezak, this is the same lab that he and I worked at. And the reason why sea turtles are in baskets or on leashes is because we have to keep track of individual turtles, and the ones that are on leashes are leatherbacks, which perpetually swim. And if we let them go in the tanks, they would perpetually bump their rostrums against the sides of the tank. And then we should also say we do release them. They are only kept until they are a certain size, which is usually only a few months, and then they get a free ride out to the Gulf Stream and released. So we're not holding them until hostage forever.
Right. That is important to note.
Yeah. All right. I always like to start each episode with a joke. And I'm not gonna lie, I kind of had a hard time finding a decent sea turtle joke. So if anybody knows any, please email me some, because
Yeah, I was gonna say the ones I found were pretty bad too. I mean, there's a lot of good dad jokes in there for sure. So if you are looking for some material, definitely Google sea turtle jokes, because you'll get some.
All right. Well, my joke could definitely file under dad jokes and corny jokes, so that's kind of my jam. Jam goes with my joke. What is a leatherback's favorite sandwich?
A PB&J jellyfish sandwich.
Yes. Did you see that on your hunt?
I did not. That's a pretty good one, actually. That's definitely better than mine. I had 2. One was turtle related and one was kind of just marine related in general.
All
so
right. Give me the corny jokes.
All right. This one's really corny. What kind of photos do sea turtles take? Shelfies.
Oh. I'm like, it's going to be something with the shell. I just can't think what it is.
Oh my goodness. And the other one was, Why are there fish at the bottom of the sea?
Why?
Because they dropped out of school.
Oh,
I know.
Love it. So since this is kind of like a special episode, we're going to do something special and throw a poem in. And Laurie, you wrote an epic poem that I'm really excited to share. Would you mind reading it for the listeners?
Yeah. So I wasn't sure if I wanted to share this. A little pretext to this. I was working in the Gulf of Mexico offshore on the BP oil spill after I graduated college. And I would be out there for about a month at a time, come back in for a week, go back out. And it was during that time being offshore, it was my first, I was working in the lab as a sea turtle biologist, but this was kind of like my first real marine biology job. And I wrote this poem, which I think is kind of corny, but Kara thinks it's okay. So I don't know. I guess I'll share it. I don't mind sharing it.
I love it because I think that there's so many people that can relate to it. So
yeah, so it's basically written from the perspective of being offshore. So you'll kind of get an idea of where my head was at when I wrote it. Okay. I hear the soft lap of water on the bow. Off in the distance, the sun is setting now. Brilliant orange and red rays aglow light up the clouds above from below. I breathe in deep the salty air, set adrift in the middle of nowhere. I close my eyes and clear my mind, give thanks for the day and the happiness I find. Peace settles in, my eyes on the horizon. I smile to myself because I'm doing what I love. So vast, so deep, there are secrets she still keeps. She still beckons me to seek what's seemingly out of reach. A little girl's dreams have come true, followed her heart and stayed true to herself. Others that doubted, she forgives for not believing in her. Those that supported, she hopes to inspire. That nothing's impossible if you're determined to succeed. Follow your heart and achieve your dreams.
Love it.
Yeah.
What was some of the stuff that you were doing on the boat? Because I think people hear you just like we're out for a month at a time working on the oil spill. And that raises some questions. So what were some of the tasks that you were doing?
Yeah, so I was a part of the NERDA project, which was the Natural Resource Damage Assessment team, basically. And we were doing deep sea research. That was my main project. So we are working with the Mach 10, which is the Multiple Opening Closing Environmental Sensing Systems, I believe, is the acronym for that. And we were towing to around 1,500 meters up to the surface. And so what the Machines has is multiple nets, as the name describes. So you can sample discrete levels of the water column. So we were trying to just get an idea of what was living in each section of the water column. So diversity, biomass, and we were towing at the basically sun up and sun down. So every night in the ocean, which most people don't realize is the largest migration on the face of the earth. Mm-hmm. And that's the vertical migration of plankton to the surface. And so we were sampling during these times, and we would tow for, I think we're towing for 6 hours at a time. And then we would just basically take those organisms that we were collecting, we'd sort them, we'd fix them, and we were sending them off to various labs to be analyzed. But we were getting kind of like a rough estimate on board as well. But all of the data that we were collecting offshore, whether it was physical or biological, was being sent basically off to different labs. And since it was part of the ongoing investigation, obviously there was a lot of legality around it. And so everything had chain of custody, and it was very strictly monitored. So we were just basically doing a lot of collection at that time, just gathering as much data as we could.
Yep. So on a big boat offshore, throwing nets in the water, collecting cool things.
Exactly. Every biologist's dream.
Yep. Not a bad first job out of college at all.
No, it wasn't. It was amazing. I loved it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I said I wouldn't interview Laurie, but it's a little bit of a backstory.
No, it's fine.
All right. So we're going to deviate back to the sea turtles, our theme for today. And some things I wanted to note, and I want to kind of dive a little bit into a couple of the species, but there are 7 species of sea turtle found worldwide, for listeners. They are the loggerhead, the green, the olive ridley, the Kemp's ridley, the hawksbill, leatherback, and then the flatback, which is only found in Australia, fun fact. And all of these sea turtles are either threatened or endangered, depending on where you are in the world, but all of them are on some sort of protection, and all of them are under some sort of duress, and their numbers are significantly less than they have been in the past. So it's important to note this because then we can kind of move forward. Actually, Laurie, what's your favorite sea turtle? Do you have a favorite?
I actually do. I love the leatherbacks. There's really a lot to love there in general. I mean, they're huge. They're the largest marine reptile in the world. They dive the deepest. They travel the farthest. They tolerate the coldest water temperatures. Like, they're just a really cool animal in general.
Yes. They're my favorite as well. And I think, I mean, they're the only ones that like cold water, which is funny because I really don't. But, but I love that they are like the truly pelagic turtles.
Yes.
Like, they just want to be, they only come to shore to nest, and that's it. They're gone. You don't see them. They're totally offshore, which, I don't know, it seems very
freeing.
Yeah, very free. Very free. Bring me that horizon, right? Kind of brings that on you. I love that.
Exactly.
But I will say that loggerheads and greens also have a little soft spot in my heart, because those are the other 2 species of sea turtles that we have nesting here in South Florida. And I wanted to chat for a couple minutes about those 3, because one, that's what we are most familiar with. So we can kind of chat for a long time if we wanted to about all of them.
How long do you want this podcast to be?
Yeah, right. But they're, that's why I was going to limit it to 3, because we chat about all 7 of them. We couldn't possibly cover the depth of what we want to cover. Well, let's chat about the leatherback for a minute. I mean, Laurie kind of covered a lot of it with the heaviest, the biggest, the deepest.
Hey, Kara here. I hear it all the time. How do I become a marine biologist? Or my niece wants to help the ocean. Where does she even start? I hear from students, yes, and also nurses, HR professionals, and other mid-career folks who wonder if they could still make their dream of working with sea turtles or sharks come true, wondering if it's too late to answer the ocean's call. Here's what I've learned after 20 years in the field and hundreds of interviews. There's no straight line, no magic degree, and no gatekeeper. You create the path forward. If this sounds overwhelming and vague, I've created 2 tools to help you stop wondering what if and start moving forward with clarity and purpose. The first is my free guide, Be a Marine Biologist Without the Degree. Over 1,000 people have already downloaded this guide and taken their first step towards ocean impact. Inside, you'll find 7 concrete, doable actions to help you get started, whether you're just exploring or ready to make a change. Then there's the Ocean Blueprint. This is a 30-day self-paced course that helps you build your unique path into ocean science and conservation without quitting your job or going back to school. Inside the Ocean Blueprint, you'll get daily prompts to explore your interests, skills, and next steps, a structure that turns overwhelm into real momentum, and a bonus section to root your work into ocean connection. You don't have to wait for a degree, a perfect plan, or permission. Whether you're wading in or ready to take the deep dive, these tools are here to help you move from dreaming to doing. The ocean called. Are you ready to answer? Links in the show notes and on my website, karagracemuzia.com. I can't wait to see the waves you'll make.
Mm-hmm. Leatherbacks in general, so I mean, let's just go over the average weight of a leatherback is going to be between 500 and 1,500 pounds. And the largest ever recorded was 10 foot long and weighed 2,000 pounds. That's a large animal.
Really
and their average carapace length, which is the shell, the top shell, is 6 foot. And I mean, I'm 6 foot tall, so it's easy for me to kind of imagine how long that is, but that's a very large turtle. So yeah, that's kind of some of the general specs. They lay the largest eggs as well. They don't actually have a hard shell like the other species do. They kind of have these bony platelets that fit together. So when they dive down, that's what actually allows them to dive down so deep, over 3,000 feet, is because these bony platelets are actually able to compress. If they had a hard shell, it would crack. So they're just really adapted very well for what they do out in the open ocean, the pelagic ranges. They're a really cool animal. And the fact that they primarily eat jellyfish, which is insane that such a large animal can sustain itself on jellyfish alone, pretty much is pretty incredible.
Which jellyfish apparently have lots of protein.
They do. If you think about them, I think Dr. Weinekin described it best to me. She was like, jellyfish are like little grocery bags of plankton, if you think about it. So really, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of water in there, but it's concentrated plankton. So
it's a good way to put it. I mean, kind of like not great because leatherbacks also eat grocery bags. But
sadly, yes,
right.
Which I'm sure we'll cover later.
Yeah, we'll get more into that later. But that's a good way to put it, is that they are just vessels of phytoplankton, which, in general, which have lots of protein. So that makes sense.
Exactly.
Crazy apples.
Mm-hmm.
I love the leathery beast. So loggerhead. So a lot of people, especially in South Florida and turtle people, take the loggerhead for granted a little bit. And it's because they are the most prolific nesters here. They're the smallest sea turtle that we have nesting here. And their numbers are crazy abundant. And we actually vie for top spot in the entire world for loggerhead nesting, which is really incredible when you stop and think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're on the beach, it's like every crawl almost is a loggerhead, and then you might get a surprise green or leatherback in there, which is awesome too. So we love the loggerheads. They, I mean, their name is funny, right? Like why is it called a loggerhead?
Yeah. Because biologists are smart and we just call it like it is. We name things based on what they look like.
I chatted with a biologist in Thailand. Actually, his episode was just released. It's episode 28 with Raul. He was like, I'm over this. We need to start coming up and being more creative. So he's like taking this upon himself to like name things differently, which I love. So he's finding different species of nudibranchs and he's just naming them different things based on like his interests or like the people that have influenced him in his life. And I'm like, that's one way to do it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's got a big head, so therefore it's a loggerhead.
Right. Oh, it's got a flat back. Let's call it a flat back.
Or a leatherback.
Right? I know. Oh my goodness.
But the loggerhead's head, actually why it's so big, it houses all these really powerful muscles that help them to chomp down on their prey. And some of their favorite snacks are conchs and crabs, which if anybody can think of a conch shell, it is super hard and super thick. And to be able to, like, if you and I tried to bite into the shell of a conch, we'd break our teeth. And like, they can do it and just crush it, which is insane to think about.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So they're cool. They're cool cats. We'll keep them around.
They are. We definitely underrate the loggerhead for sure. I mean, we were talking about this before. They're one of our favorite nests to dig because they're so shallow. But yeah, they're everywhere, and it is kind of cool that we do vie for that top spot. I was actually looking up the other day, And the most important nesting beaches for loggerheads are in Brevard, Indian River, St. Lucia, Martin, and Palm Beach County. So that's all right on our coast here, which is, it's really cool. That's really cool.
Special title. So greenie babies. In the lab, they were my favorite because I like their mischievousness. So greens are very active. And it's funny, if you get all three species of hatchlings together, you can really see the difference. So loggerheads are like, I don't know, I feel like they're pretty middle of the road. They kind of like move, but they're not like super fast or slow. They're just kind of like going along at their own pace. Leatherbacks, they're pelagic swimmers, right? So they have these huge, long flippers that extend like past their carapace, and they're really dopey on land. So like watching them crawl into the water from the beach, it's just like watching somebody with dive flippers on trying to walk on land. Like it just
That's true.
It doesn't. And then like a lot of the times they'll do a little circle, and they're just very awkward. And then you get the greens, and they are like a mile a minute, and they like in the lab they would be trying to climb out of these baskets. You have to label them somehow. We would use non-toxic nail polish and put it on their carapace and have to redo it because they would rub up on things and get out of their baskets, and you have to remember which one's which so you can feed them properly. But if you get them all lined up on the beach, the green will win every time. I'll put my money. That's the hare. The rest of them are truly the tortoise or the turtles. They're the hare. They're super fast and funny.
Yeah, they're like the Labrador retrievers of the lab. Like they're like these. They're so excited all the time. Like you said, they just have all this energy. But you'd have to just see them, like you said, all kind of lined up to understand the energy that the green has.
So greens are fun, and that's probably the most common turtle that people think of because they are so charismatic. I feel like when you look up sea turtle on Google, it's mostly green sea turtles. They're like the friendliest or like least afraid of people is what it seems like. It's actually what Crush from Finding Nemo is based off of, is green sea turtle. Fun fact. You know, scientists did name them green because parts of them are green, but it's not because their skin or their shell is green, which is kind of fun. You want to share why?
Yeah, so they actually have green body fat.
And it comes from eating so much seagrass. So greens have serrated jaw lines. It's not really teeth, but it's serrated jaws, and they can actually mow the grass like seagrass like a lawnmower. And so they'll clip the grass, and they eat so much of it that it turns their fat and tissues green. And that's how they got their name.
Fun facts about greens. Yeah, they actually that's primarily what they use for turtle soup, or used to use for turtle soup. I'm sure you can still get it in certain countries. So yeah, Grand Cayman I think still has turtle farms, and they're all green sea turtles. That they are. I have a fun fact about that later.
We covered leatherbacks, the biggest. The Kemp's Ridley is the smallest sea turtle, and that's also found in Florida, just not in as big in numbers as the leatherback, loggerhead, or green. And I have a fun fact about that later. How about that?
Ooh, I can't wait.
So I wanted to kind of go over some general life cycle stuff with turtles, and this does change worldwide. Obviously, we come from the perspective of the East Coast of the U.S., so that's mostly where we're coming from when we talk about life cycles of turtles and where they're going. But for the most part, sea turtles hatch, and they go out to the ocean and find something big to float on, and they eat whatever's floating there with them. So it could be other small fish or shrimp or what kind of little jellies, things that they can ingest, and they grow and grow and grow. And then eventually they come back to about where they hatch from and nest if they're female. On average, it takes about 25 years to reach sexual maturity. So this is a really long lifespan.
Yeah, and they actually, they're going to nest multiple times within a season, and then every 2 to 3 years after that. So it's, when you see them nest, it could be their first nest, it could be their fourth nest of the season, depending on, where we're at in the season as well. But I think that's also kind of neat to realize that they're nesting multiple times in one season.
Mm-hmm. And then they don't come back the next year.
Correct.
A lot of energy. So it takes a
Correct.
ton of energy to create all those eggs and dig all those holes and lay them
Yeah.
all. And then they take a break, which makes total sense.
Right. I mean, like you said, they're very clumsy on land. I mean, they're graceful in the water, but as soon as you get those things on land, oh my gosh, the effort it takes to haul their bodies up there. And then some of them are false body pitting, and then they're going and doing another body pit, and then they're digging. And it's a lot of effort to lay these eggs, and then they cover them up and they say, bye-bye, and they just leave.
I've heard mothers of teenagers being told, kind of the life cycle of a turtle. And she's like, wait, hold on. The turtle digs the nest, lays the eggs, covers it up, and says peace out, and doesn't actually have to raise them. Like, how do I sign up for that? I think she's having some issues at home. I thought that was pretty funny.
A little fun fact, when you see them up on land laying, most times you'll see tears almost coming out of their eyes, and a lot of people will say oh, the turtle's weeping or the turtle's crying. Yes, I guess if you want to think of it that way, but it's actually just excess salt being removed from the turtle's body, which is kind of interesting. So,
and they are doing this all the time. It's not just when
they are. Yeah, exactly. So they're doing this all the time. It's an adaptation they have, but it's just in the water. Obviously, it's being washed away. You're not going to be able to see the tears in the water. So
amazing adaptations.
Exactly.
Trees that uptake salt water, like red mangroves, will excrete it on the leaves, or that's not mangroves, and then turtles excrete it through their tears. It's kind of crazy. Nature.
Exactly. Yep. And it's also, I guess, important to note that only 1 in 1,000 actually make it to adulthood. So that's why they have to lay so many eggs. They're not putting a lot of effort into their youngs. Obviously, they're not caring for them. So, with that being said, they have a lot of hurdles they have to get over just to survive to reproductive age. I mean, everything's trying to eat them. They're small. They have no direction. They're just using, visual and auditory cues just to make it to the ocean. So, yeah, I mean, they're literally born buried alive. I don't know how bad it can get for you in terms of starting life buried alive. That's pretty bad.
That's
so
true.
Yeah, they don't really have a big success rate or survival rate.
Right. Which is why it's our responsibility to do as much as we can to help the natural cycles do their thing and lessen our impacts, because the natural cycles, like you mentioned, are really real. So they get out on the beach, and if the raccoons or the coyotes or the foxes didn't dig them up out of their nests and they actually make it on the beach, now the raccoons still might get them, or the crabs or the birds if it's daytime. And then once they're in the water, everything likes to eat them, from different
mahi, yeah,
mahi, tarpon, I mean, all different kinds of fish. And then seabirds, if they see a sea turtle, favorite snack award for sure.
Yep.
So
definitely,
they definitely have a hard go of it starting out, because they are small. I mean, they're less than the size of the palm of your hand when they're hatched out. And then they grow to be, I mean, loggerheads are this, like I said, the smallest that we have nesting here, but it's still a 300-pound animal.
I think that's what most people have misconceptions about, is especially people that don't live near the ocean, is when they hear the word sea turtle, and if they've never seen one, they're thinking of these little turtles that you see in a pond, or a lake or whatever. And then when they actually see a sea turtle and their massive size, I mean, yes, loggerhead is smaller in comparison to a leatherback, but like you said, that's still a 300-pound animal.
Even the Kemp's, which is the smallest sea turtle in the world, still is what is that, 150 pounds, 100 pounds?
Yeah,
I
about
mean,
100 pounds.
That's, That's not nothing to sneeze at. That's not a 5-pound pond turtle.
No, it's not. It's not. They're substantial in size, that's for sure.
Yes. So here in Florida and up and down the east coast of the U.S., this fluctuates a little bit, but nesting season runs from March 1st through October 31st. The further north you go, the less the season is because they actually have seasons, and we really don't. They're much more mild. Worldwide, sea turtles nest in the summertime is the general rule of thumb. So obviously, that can fluctuate with the months and the changing of the seasons. On average, sea turtles will lay. We mentioned they will come back and lay a couple of nests each year, and in each nest is anywhere from 70 to about 130 eggs on average. There have been anomalies up to 200 eggs in one nest, which is kind of insane to think about. That's a lot of eggs.
That's a lot of eggs.
And they're on average about the size of a ping pong ball, to give people an idea. And they're not hard like a chicken egg. They're soft. They're rubbery, because otherwise, like if you they're digging a hole, and they dig them about as long as their back flippers are. So depending on the size of the turtle, so loggerheads about foot and a half down. Leatherbacks, this could be like a 4-foot hole. Like they have really long flippers. And if you drop a couple chicken eggs on top of each other in a 4-foot hole, that's gonna crack. All these sea turtles, all their eggs are more rubbery feeling, and they will kind of bounce a little bit and then settle in, and they don't crack when they are dropped from heights like that.
Nope, they don't.
This is like really nitty gritty, but do we know if there's like different densities to the shells? So like, I mean, leatherbacks drop from a greater height on average than like other species. Like, do they have thicker
shells, do you think?
Yeah.
I'm not really sure. I'm sure we could look in the literature, and some biologist has done a study on that, I'm sure. But off the top of my head, I don't know the answer to that. Things for further study.
Right. I feel like that covers a lot of the general stuff about sea turtles. Do you have anything else to add?
I think we pretty much covered it. There's a lot of things that we could cover, honestly, but we're just trying to give you an overview of.
We talked about digging in their nest, and we should say why we do that.
Say why we dig their nests?
Yeah, why do sea turtle biologists dig in sea turtle nests, right?
Because we love strong shoulders.
Right.
And we love body pitting to dig a hole for a leatherback nest, and then hooking your feet under the ATV so you can get further into the hole and still not reach the bottom. We like work.
We like work. We like being really sandy.
Yeah.
So during the summertime here in Florida and elsewhere in the U.S., up and down the eastern seaboard, sea turtle nests are monitored daily. And you know what? This isn't just the eastern seaboard. I should not exclude the Gulf of Mexico, because they do sea turtle monitoring as well.
Yes, they do. Yeah.
Shout out Gulf of Mexico. So
shout out Sanibel Island.
Yeah, right. There's places in Texas.
There are lots of places in Texas. Yes.
There are biologists that go out most mornings. Here it's every single morning during the summertime, and look for new crawls. So this is literally the tracks of a crawl of a sea turtle coming up the beach. And depending on what the crawl looks like, you can tell what species the sea turtle is, because they all have unique crawls. If a turtle nests, or even if it doesn't nest, we document what the turtle did when it came out of the water, whether it just turned around and went back in, which is what we call a false crawl, or if it maybe made it like a little pit and started to think about nesting, but then said, no, I don't like this for whatever reason, and then went back in. We would call that still a false crawl, but with a body pit. Or if it nested. And if it nested, people that go to the beach in the summer times and see like the cute little marked off nests, that's only a small portion of the nests. We would be out there all day and all night if we marked every single nest. So we don't. We just kind of take a GPS point. We know where it is. We'll kind of keep an eye on the general area, but we only mark a certain subset of these nests. And the ones that we do mark, we do check every single day. We wait for them to hatch out, and 3 days after they hatch, we'll go in, and because we want things to be as natural as possible, so we'll go in 3 days after they hatch and dig up what's left in the clutch. So ideally, in a perfect world, we're digging up only hatched papery eggs, and it's beautiful. But it's nature, and that doesn't happen all the time. Doesn't usually happen, actually. It's wonderful when it does. So we see how many eggs hatched, how many didn't, and if there's any live or dead turtles in the nest. And that's what we call the reproductive success. And that is why we dig into nests and get really sandy in the process, because documenting the crawl is only part of the story. Seeing what actually happens in the nest is another part of the story.
Correct. And the more we can correlate that data with, what we have experience with Dr. Weinekin, she has these temperature loggers. So you can correlate the hatchling success due to whatever the physical parameters of the nest were, temperature, moisture, things like that. The more data, the better, especially when it comes to managing a species.
So we've come to this part of the episode where I wanted to try to surprise each other with facts that we may or may not know about sea turtle. And I'm like looking over my facts going, Laurie may know this because she reads a lot of literature. I just learned it, so it's surprising to me. So we'll see if I can surprise you.
Okay.
All right. Again, this is Florida-centric, but we have a body of water located here called the Indian River Lagoon. And we have green sea turtles that hang out here because there's lots of seagrass, and they're usually juvenile green sea turtles. So this is common worldwide. If you live in tropical or subtropical climates and have a body of water, you might have some green sea turtles hanging out there if there's seagrass present. So I learned that the sea turtles that are here aren't just born here. They're not just locals. They come from Mexico, the Caribbean, Costa Rica, Brazil, Ascension Island, like West Africa, Mediterranean. There's genetic studies that showed like where these turtles are coming from. And it blew my mind. I had no idea. I thought they were all from here.
I guess that kind of makes sense that there's different foraging grounds. So it's probably a major foraging ground. But yeah, that's crazy that through genetics they can trace that and see exactly where each turtle's coming from. That's really cool.
Isn't that cool? Yeah, that was a study by Doc Earhart.
I like it. I like it a lot. The facts that I have, well, two of them are kind of history lessons, which, you may or may not know. I thought they were kind of cool. And then another one is a study. So okay. I'll do one of the history lessons first. So in the mid 1800s, merchants discovered that they could keep turtles alive by flipping them on their backs and keeping them in the shade. And by 1878, 15,000 greens were shipped from Florida and the Caribbean to England because there was a really big demand on turtles. Because they would eat their meat, they'd use their hide, they use their fat, as we talked about with the greens, for green turtle soup. And actually, Key West was a major processing center for the trade of turtles back in that time. And so what they would do is they would take the turtles, they'd capture them, and they keep them in these shallow water corrals in Key West before they were shipped off to England, which I thought was a really interesting factoid / history lesson.
Interesting history lesson. My next fact is I'm just gonna read it. So leatherbacks have been found off of Nova Scotia. Like I tell people this and it still blows my mind. And I'm sure you knew this as well. Mm-hmm. But did you know they have been spotted off of Iceland, Norway, Alaska, beyond the Arctic Circle?
I did actually just read that recently. And it blew my mind too, because I didn't realize the range was that far.
Right?
Into the cold.
Right. They were spotted swimming in the Barents Sea, which I had to look up where that was. It is north of the Norwegian Sea. It is solidly in the Arctic Circle. And they're swimming around icebergs in 0 degrees Celsius water. This is freezing seawater. This is a reptile. And they're like, I don't care. There's jelly.
Yeah. It's absolutely insane. No cold stunning of leatherbacks in Florida, that's for sure.
It's amazing.
They laugh at our cold stunning events.
That's true. Oh, yes. So cold stunning, I guess one of the reasons why this is so incredible is that the other sea turtles act more like reptiles, and they like to stick to a warmer water. And if it gets too cold, like in the 60s Fahrenheit, I'm not sure what that translates to Celsius, they'll die. They get really lethargic, and then they can die from it. It happened a bunch of years ago. We had a really, really cold winter here in cold for Florida winter, and we had a lot of cold stunned turtles, and a lot of them ended up dying. So the fact that leatherbacks can intentionally seek out and live in these Arctic conditions blows my mind.
And that is why they are so cool. I like that one a lot.
Mm-hmm.
All right. My second history lesson is about the Cayman Islands. As we know, they were discovered by Christopher Columbus. He named them Las Tortugas after seeing numerous sea turtles swimming around the islands. And he actually wrote about it. On his second voyage, he wrote, "In those 20 leagues, the sea was thick with them, so numerous that it seemed that the ships would run aground on them and were as if bathing in them." And then on a fourth voyage he had, his son, Ferdinand, described the Cayman Islands as 2 very small and low-lying islands full of turtles, as was all the sea about. So they looked like little rocks. And they estimated that at the time, the Cayman Islands had several million animals in their population, which to me is completely mind-blowing. So it just kind of goes to show you, how much they thrived back then. Mm-hmm. And then to now, where we've pushed them on the brink of, they're endangered and they need protection. So just to give you an idea of the numbers, I can't even imagine millions of turtles in one area for a population. That's just insane to me.
That's a really cool visual.
Yeah, I thought so.
I love it. Seas were teeming with turtles. You covered one of my leatherback factoids earlier, that they've been recorded down to 1,000 meters, which is like roughly 3,000 feet, which is over half a mile, which the pressure at that depth is insane, which is why they have the leather back and they can compress, and all their organs can compress, like the mammalian diving reflex, but they're not mammals. So because you already said that one, I gotta back up. I thought it was interesting. There's been observed patterns of swimming for the leatherbacks. They're different in the north. They'll stay at the surface a lot. So as they get into colder water, they'll hang out the surface more and more to try to warm up and get in the sun. And then versus down south in their nesting grounds, they stay mostly underwater.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
So I thought that was really interesting, and I wonder if it's cooler, not at the surface down here, and if they can handle being in freezing cold water, they probably want to stay a little as cool as possible. But I also wonder if some of that is a little bit of learned behavior because there's so much more boat traffic in warmer water, and if they learn to stay low.
Yeah, that would be interesting, but definitely makes sense because we do have a lot of boat strikes for turtles, for sure, here in Florida especially. I have one more factoid, which I thought was really interesting. There was a study from 2016 on green turtles in the southern Atlantic Ocean. And what they did was they measured trace metals in their blood samples. They found that copper and lead were positively correlated with indicators of oxidative stress, which makes sense. The higher the oxidative stress, the more likely the turtle had fibropapilloma, which is a tumor-bearing disease affecting many of the green turtles that we see worldwide, actually. Basically, the more copper and lead that were bioaccumulated in the tissues of these animals, they had an increased instance of fibropapilloma. And I mean, we see the same thing in humans. When you increase a body burden, it lowers the immune system, which increases your disease potential. So I just thought it was interesting that the concept makes sense, but now that we're kind of starting to have the data to support that, these disease processes, there's probably more to them, obviously, and we're going to get it more into like the conservation side later. I thought that was an interesting fact.
That is really interesting. All right, I have one. I like was gonna leave it off, but I kind of really like this fact a lot because I stumbled upon it recently. It's about the Kemps, Ridley. They nest in the Gulf of Mexico, largely, and they nest in what's called an arrabata. That's a really American way of saying it. So, and it's like the olive Ridley does the same thing. So, in arrabata, all the turtles come up onto the beach and nest all at once, and it's the Kemps nest during the day, and it's just chaos. Like there's turtles everywhere, there's sand flying, it's just mayhem. And that's how they nest, which is very different from how the other species nest, which is usually in the quiet of the night by themselves. Very different. So there's actually aerial footage from the 1940s of over 40,000 Kemp's Ridleys nesting on one beach in one day in the Gulf of Mexico.
Wow. I'm sure that's a cool photo.
Right? 40,000.
Yeah.
I got to see if I can find a photo of it.
Hey, strength in numbers. More power to them.
Right? And now they're considered one of the rarest and most endangered turtle.
Yeah, I guess in the same sense, it kind of makes it easy for poaching too.
Right. So it's a combo. It's the overharvesting of their eggs, which they're now protected, and like that's really illegal. But also the bycatch and trawls, gill nets, traps, dredges. You know, the fishing aspect of it. They do live closer to shore. They hunt like loggerheads, so they'll kind of eat in mud flats, they'll eat crabs and stuff like that. So they're more susceptible to us. Their numbers are now, like I said, they're the rarest and most endangered sea turtle. And they have footage of 40,000 on one beach in one day.
Yeah, that's a lot of turtles.
So this kind of segues really nice into the threats. So there, like we said, you know, all the species of sea turtles are protected. They're all considered endangered or threatened in some capacity worldwide. And there's a myriad of things that contribute to this. As we kind of talk about each of these points, I like my listeners to kind of think about what you can do to help. And obviously we can't all do everything, but if you could pick up one little piece of this and take it home and run with it, and I'll try to give some like bite-sized action items for everybody. But if you can kind of think about like how this applies to where you live or what you do or how you could help and be a part of the solution or be a part of the solution, as Justin would say, because I really like that a lot. It's definitely something, because I don't like to just like list out all the things that are wrong and not give y'all like some action item or some way to like help, because it's daunting. But there are some things that definitely need to be brought to light if you don't know them already, and there are ways to help. So with that, sea turtles got some stuff going. I mean, the ocean has some stuff going on, and these sea turtles are definitely caught up in it.
I think first we should just talk about commercial fishing. There's what's called TEDs, which are the turtle excluder devices. And what these are it's implemented for fishing trawls, basically, because there's a lot of bycatch with shrimping and long lining, but that's a different conversation. So what they did was they was trying to develop a device, basically, that they could put in the net and it would help turtles or larger animals escape. So basically what a TED is, it's kind of like a grid of bars, and it's got an opening at the top or the bottom, and they put it in the trawl net, and it allows shrimp to go through those metal bars into the caught end of the net. But then when something like a turtle or a shark or something larger hits those bars, it opens up I think you can think of it as like a trap door, basically, and releases the large animal from the net. So it reduces bycatch, and it's been kind of a really cool tool that's been implemented into the commercial fisheries, because there is such a large number of bycatch, which is anything that you're catching outside of your target of species. And sea turtles, unfortunately, they get caught up in that. And if they get caught in a net, they need to breathe air. A lot of times they're dragging these nets for hours at a time, and then the turtles are drowning. So they needed to come up with a solution as to how to get these animals out of the net to save them, basically.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a overview of the TEDs.
So
Go
I'm
ahead.
reading Carl Safina's Voyage of the Turtle book, which is where I've gotten most of my leathery beast facts for the day. It's a really good read. And he went, in the book, he kind of dives into the history of TEDs a bit. And it's interesting, they created the TEDs in 1987, but they were small. The holes were small, and they were actually catching leatherbacks. And it took them 25 years for them to actually make the holes big enough for leatherbacks. And there was concern in the fishing industry that the bigger hole would allow a lot of more fish to go through and their catch would be less. But it was actually found that they were letting out the things that they didn't want anyway. Unfortunately, trash is one of them. But so it ended up helping the fishermen in some aspect, not just the turtles. So that's a nice part of it. And then something else that was pointed out with the TEDs that I never really considered, but makes total sense, is that it's like the TEDs are really great in that they allow fishermen to go out and continue to fish in that manner, and then it allows the turtles to escape. But if turtles are caught up in a TED, it's not just like, okay, swim through once, pop out. Like, they're kind of swimming against the current. They're trying to figure out what's going on. It might take them a minute to get out of the net, or a few minutes. And if they're underwater for 20 minutes, kind of like freaking out, figuring out how to get out, now they're surface, they come up for air, and if they get sucked up again immediately by another net, and that it keeps happening, like, it can wear on them and they can drown anyway. So the TEDs are a wonderful thing in that they've definitely reduced the amount of bycatch and mortality from turtles, but they were finding turtles still coming up on the beach even after the implementation of the bigger TEDs, because if they get caught more than once or twice, like, they just can't handle it.
Yeah, no, and you're absolutely right. And since they were developed, I mean, NOAA's been working with the fishing community, and they're constantly kind of like redesigning this thing, trying to make it better. And they're still, even though it's mandatory, it's required in U.S. waters, the Gulf and South Atlantic right now, they're still trying to better that design because, like you said, there are still some issues with it. But according to NOAA, they are 97% effective. So they're doing something, but it's not necessarily a perfect solution, but it is helping for sure.
We're going to leave commercial fishing at TEDs, because if we dive down the rabbit hole, I could do a whole series of podcast episodes on commercial fishing, which maybe we should do. We're going to leave it at TEDs for the day, give y'all something to chew on. But the thing I want to highlight with the turtle excluder devices is that it did take a piece of legislation to be enacted in order for this to become law for people to do. And that takes people that care to be put into office. So vote. That's my pitch for you guys today. If you live somewhere that uses nets, maybe kind of examine what those nets are and how they're affecting the wildlife in your area. You may not have sea turtles, but maybe they're impacting other wildlife in different ways. So educate yourself on the commercial fishing in your area and how it impacts wildlife, and how you can be a part of making it better for everybody, because there is a place for fishing. I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole, but there's a place for fishing, and we'll leave it at that.
Right. But there's also responsible fishing. So, our goal is to just try to continue to work with the fishing community and coming up with viable solutions that are affordable for them, make sense for them, and also are helping, the target species that we're trying to protect, in this case, sea turtles. So, it's a continual conversation, but like you said, voting is definitely a big part of it too, because a lot of times people aren't just going to go out and do it out of the goodness of their hearts, which I wish was the case. Sometimes people need to be forced to protect their resources.
All right. So next big threat, and this is a really big one.
Yes, this is a big one.
And this is something that everybody can do every single day. Reduce your plastic output. That's it.
Yeah. So plastic pollution is a big one. Big. So there's two types of plastic pollution, or, marine debris, that we're going to talk about, and that's land-based, and then there's ocean-based. Land-based debris is going to come from the beaches, the streets, the landfills, obviously land-based sources. Ocean plastic is going to come from maybe garbage that's disposed of by cruise ships. It could be fishing gear in terms of nets or lines or anchors or ghost nets and things of that nature. Fun fact, 80% of marine debris actually comes from land-based sources. So that garbage patch out in the gyre, not just the Pacific garbage patch, but in every gyre there is a garbage patch. 80% of that is from a land-based source. So us on land, humans live on land. So, it's a good place to start in terms of where we can reduce our plastic consumption. Especially single-use plastics are huge, but we can go into that in a minute. I do have some cool stats on plastic pollution that I'd like to share real quick. 12.7 million tons of plastic a year go into the ocean. Since 1950, we've produced over 320 million tons of plastic, and every piece of plastic that's ever been produced still exists today. And we're still producing it. So a plastic bottle that can take up to 450 years to degrade in a marine environment, that's going to break down into smaller and smaller pieces, eventually making it into the microplastic category, which is plastics that aren't visible to the human eye. But like I said, they never completely go away. They're breaking down due to the sun, photodegradation, the wind, the waves. The chemicals are still persistent. The EPA actually estimates that 90% of plastics in the pelagic marine environment are microplastics. So those plastics that have broken down, it makes sense, just based on the volume that's out there. The marine environment in general is pretty hard on things. So it's going to, between the sun and the salt and the waves, that's you think about it, and it's hard for people to visualize what they can't see. So when you think about 90% of those plastics out there are microplastics, which you can't visibly see. I mean, that's just what you don't see. Look at all the plastic we do see. And that just gives you an idea of the amount of garbage that's out there.
It definitely gives you pause. And one of the things we kind of chatted about earlier that is just really eye-opening is last summer there was a hatchling that washed up on a beach nearby, and Loggerhead Marine Life Center did a necropsy on it, and which is an autopsy but on an animal. So they opened it up to see cause of death, and they found I forget the exact number of pieces of microplastics that were in the turtle's stomach, but it was like something like 30 or 50 pieces of microplastics in this 3-week-old sea turtle's stomach. And that's ultimately what killed it. So it's affecting, it's not just affecting like fish out in the ocean. It's like affecting newborn hatchlings, which is insane.
Oh, of course. I mean, if you think about it, there's trash on the beach. So these turtles are digging through the sand, which is full of plastic. They're being born in plastic. They're crawling over plastic to get into a sea that's filled with plastic. They're eating animals that have been eating microplastics. It's It's really sad. Yeah. And actually, a point I do want to bring up as well is that there's something called persistent bioaccumulative and toxic substances, which is PBTs. And those are basically chemicals that are resistant to degradation. They persist in the marine environment. These chemicals concentrate on the ocean surface because they don't necessarily readily dissolve in the water. They're hydrophobic. So when they come in contact with plastic, what they're finding is these microplastics are a magnet for these chemicals, these industrial chemicals. So not only are these plastics breaking down and releasing their own chemicals, polyethylene, polypropylene, they're actually collecting a lot of other industrial chemicals, whether that's PFOS, PFAS, DDT, all these other chemicals in the environment. They're collecting them as well. They're becoming these little magnets. So just think about, in terms of bioaccumulation, you have these microplastics that have their own chemicals that they're made of, but then they're also just grabbing on to all these other industrial chemicals that are in the water system these days from industry, that aren't, can't be filtered out by our filtration systems, or, they're in there due to runoff or whatever, however they got there. And then, the plankton's eating them, and then the smaller fish are eating the plankton, and they're being magnified and bioaccumulated up the food chain. That's also a problem, that like we were talking about with the lead and the copper, with the fibropapilloma. You think of these heavy metals that a lot of these animals are exposed to and are bioaccumulating, but there's also all of these other environmental toxins that are an issue as well. And we're still just scraping the surface of trying to understand how that affects their life cycle, how that affects their development, reproduction, health in general. Obviously, we know it's going to be a negative effect, but we're just kind of starting to get that data, which is, it's good. We need it for evidence for conservation, and that's what we can use to kind of push forward in finding solutions, which I think is probably a good place to go next with solutions of how we can help this, because we've had a little bit of doom and gloom. So
yes, solutions.
You can make a difference. It starts with you and me and your neighbor and your mom and your dad. Simple thing, refillable water bottles.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, get a stainless steel water bottle. Stop drinking out of plastic water bottles. Get a filter if you want to for your home water system. A lot of places now have filtered water. Bring a water bottle.
I got two things on this one. I find an inordinate amount of plastic water bottles and plastic water bottle caps on the beach, so it's like definitely something that bothers me. But one, it's cheaper. Like, if you're not paying for bottled water, it's cheaper, and also it's made of plastic, and plastics are made of chemicals, and they can leach into your water bottle. So if it's sitting out in the sun and stuff, it's not the best. But two, I just genuinely love my reusable water bottle because I can put ice in it and water in the morning, and it will stay cold all day. And it's amazing. I actually have two. I have one that's like grab and go size, and then I have like a big 1/2 gallon, like that's my refill container if I know I'm going to be gone for long periods of time and questionable access to water fountains. I'll bring my like big kahuna and leave it in the car, and it still stays cold. It's great.
Right. And if it gets warm, you don't have to worry. Exactly. Right. Because those chemicals are leaching into your water 100%. So that's not good for your health. So get a refillable water bottle. They're everywhere. Find one you like, put stickers on it. I don't know, make it fun so you'll want to use it, and take it with you everywhere. That's one simple thing that you can do. You can also bring your own grocery bag to the grocery stores. It doesn't even have to be one of those fancy bags that they sell. It can be any bag that you have. I know we all have extra bags laying around our houses, whether it's a backpack or an old Victoria's Secret bag, or I don't know. Like, everybody has a bag.
True.
Put them in your car, hang them next to your door, wherever you can visually see them. Because a lot of times people will be like, oh, I have 50 bags, but that's because I always forget them in my car, or I never remember to put them in my car, and then I never have them. And then I just end up buying another one and using that. And it's so there's a little bit of a behavioral adjustment, I think, that needs to be made when bringing your own bag, but you can do it.
Yeah,
can.
So I leave mine in the car, and I have forgotten it a handful of times in the car. But you know what? It's so easy to just leave your car. I mean, it's usually at the grocery store, but like, I'll bring a bag into any store that I'm shopping at, whether it's the hardware store or if I'm buying clothes. Like, no, I don't need your plastic bag. Thank you. I don't, even if it's not plastic. No, I don't need your bag. I can throw it in my purse or my backpack, or I have it in the bag. But I do leave it. I leave my bags in the car because I usually have my car with me when I'm out and about, and it's like 2 minutes to run out and grab them. It's not a big deal.
Exactly.
I'll leave my cart in the middle of the aisle. I'll be back in 2 minutes, and it's always there. I've never had anybody move it.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. No one's stealing your food, right?
Yeah, it's not paid for yet. Like, you may as well just get it off the shelf and set it out of my cart. But
the other things that you can do, glass over plastic for food storage in your kitchen. There's a lot of places that you can replace plastic in your kitchen, whether that's saran wrap or Ziploc storage bags. Switch over to silicone if you can. Silicone is fine at room temperature or in the fridge. Don't heat silicone, but room temperature or fridge is fine. If you have an option to get glass food storage containers over plastic, that's better too. And then you're not going to be leaching chemicals into your food from the plastic as well. So it's kind of a twofold. But I think it just takes each person kind of sitting down and taking a real hard look at their life and reevaluating, where are my single-use plastics in my life? Like, where do I use the most single-use plastics? What are some better alternatives that I can implement for those things in my life? And are they practical for me? If everybody just kind of did that, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to just do everything in one day. And I think that's where people get hung up on things, is they try to make the changes too fast and all at once. And it's more of building healthy habits. So pick one thing for a week and change it, and then add another thing, and then add another thing. Once you have that down into a habit, just compound these good behaviors. And then before you know it, you'll have a lifestyle change in that way. You can look at your personal care products, your household cleaning products, try to switching to non-toxic. That water that you flush down your drain, it goes somewhere, and the toxins in it go with it. So, we can all do a little better than we're doing right now. And it doesn't have to be a dramatic change, but if everyone just does a little better, it's going to make a huge impact.
I agree. I think it's really funny. You mentioned it just becomes like a total lifestyle change. And it's something that I've worked on over the years. And I have people come over and ask me for a paper towel. And I'm like, I don't have those in my house.
Yeah.
It's not plastic, but I don't have them in my house. So I'll give them, a nice rag, a nice kitchen bar towel.
Well, and even now they have really cool replacements for that. Like, you can get bamboo cloths basically that you can wash. So they come on a roll. That's what we have at our house. We use them to clean up all the time, and then we just throw them in the washer, and then we reuse them. They even have just like you said, you could have just rags for folded up on your counter. There's things that you can do to kind of offset that for sure.
All right, those are some excellent solutions. There's a million ways that you can kind of reduce and be a part of that solution. If you guys are looking for like concrete examples, head over to the website marinebio.life/resources. I have a whole resource of ocean-friendly products. So feel free to peruse that, check it out. Pick one thing, commit to it for like at least a week. If it takes you a month to get that nailed down, nail it down before you pick another thing. But there's some very easy things to kind of flip-flop in your life to reduce your plastic output, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So let's chat about climate change and nests and how it's impacting the nests of sea turtles.
Climate change, hot button topic. The Earth's heating up. Sea levels are rising. These are all things that are affecting sea turtles. Sea turtles are one of the unique species that not only use the ocean, but they also use the beaches. So land and sea, they have a little bit of everything.
With the land-based part of this and increasing temperatures affects the land and sea. But with the land-based part of this, sea turtles' sex determination is determined by the temperature of their nest for the most part. And so if you guys haven't listened to episode 4, it's hot chicks and cool dudes. So it's the easiest way to remember it. So the hotter the sand, the ladies like it. We get mostly female sea turtles. Cooler sand, we get dudes. Lately, we've been getting a lot of females. You want to chat a little bit about that, Laurie?
Yeah, so that was basically, or is, part of Dr. Weineken's lifelong studies down in South Florida, is the sex determination due to climate change. So she's looking at different nests up and down the East Coast and trying to see the trend over time of if those ratios of male versus females are being skewed. And what we're finding is that, yes, they are, and they're being skewed towards females. So we're getting about 90% females here in South Florida. And, that can be due to hotter sand temperatures, which I know we did see, or I have seen a lot, especially with the leatherbacks. When the sand temperature gets so hot, it's baking these hatchlings in their nest, and we're having a higher mortality rate. So there is a level of, hot versus too hot for sure. And we are kind of starting to see some of that, which is not so good.
And then, you brought up a good point earlier about like land. So with the climate change, we get more extreme weather events, and not just, here we get hurricanes, but not just the hurricanes. In the fall, we have these very notorious, what we call fall tides. They usually coincide with king tide, and with the fall winds that come through, our beaches get inundated with water. And this isn't good for our sea turtles because they need to be in hot sand in order to actually properly incubate and cook. And so when you have inundation in a nest, usually that spells not good nesting hatch rates. So it's something else to consider as like sea levels rise and as we get these more intense storm events and weather patterns change. It's just another aspect that influences wildlife, and in this instance, sea turtles.
Yeah, no, that's a really important point because they can take a little bit of moisture due to the tides, depending on where they're laid on the tide line. But, like you said, what we are seeing is these, with the water levels rising, which in South Florida, we are seeing this quite frequently, and it's very prevalent down here. These nests are actually getting inundated with water for longer periods of time, and it is affecting the hatchling success. And not only just that, these stronger storms, sea level rise, it's taking away, the beach, and that's where they nest. And we already have limited beach space as it is. So it's just making their nesting habitat shorter and shorter and shorter, which is an issue as well.
So I want to wind up here with a couple of lessons that you learned from Dr. Jay Nichols, who has written a wonderful book called Blue Mind, and I feel like that's might be what he's most known for in the everyday world. But in the turtle world, he's a sea turtle biologist, and he's done a lot of really wonderful things. And you actually got to take a course with Dr. Nichols. Could you explain what the course is and some of the lessons that you learned?
Yeah, so I had an opportunity in college to go do a little study abroad for a summer over in Mexico, and that's where I met Jay, was through the School for Field Studies, and I was in a little fishing town called Puerto San Carlos, which was on the Baja Peninsula, and he came in and taught one of our lectures, and he's like you said, a really prevalent sea turtle biologist over on the West Coast, and a lot of his research is done down in Baja, California. And there was just what he said about these three takeaways. The main thing that sticks in my mind, these three principles that he taught were in terms of conservation and trying to protect and conserve this species, is that the first principle that we need to think about is what we're putting into the ocean, which we've kind of covered with marine debris, industrial chemicals. We also need to look at what we're taking out of the ocean in terms of bycatch and poaching, entanglement and fishing gear, ghost nets, things like that. And also the third principle would be destroying our coastline. So whether that's through coastal development, sea level rise, seawalls, which every time you put a seawall up in front of a building on a beach, you're going to get a decrease of beach in front of that seawall. And so that's just less habitat. Like a sea turtle can't nest there. So the more seawalls that we have on these coastlines, it's why renourishments, one of the reasons why renourishments are such a huge thing here in Florida. People love their beach, but yet we keep building on the dune and then spending all this money trying to put the beach back. And it's kind of ridiculous concept if you think about it. But yeah, those were the three principles that kind of really stuck with me from his lesson. And it kind of encompasses everything that we were just talking about. So what we're putting in, what we're taking out, and destroying the coastline. If you can kind of just think about those three principles in management, it's important to address those when you're talking about conservation.
Absolutely. Great points, Laurie. This was super fun. I'm laughing because I was like, oh, we'll talk for like 20 to 30 minutes. Laurie,
Yeah.
It's going to be at least an hour, Kara. And she was way more accurate than I was.
Yeah. I kind of knew that we were just going to get talking, and I knew that the threats was going to be a big one, because we both talk for days about that, for sure. Especially since sea turtles are such a canary in the coal mine,
They are.
If you see issues with this species that uses both land and sea, it's a good indication of global health, and our environmental health. The more that we can kind of understand what's affecting this species, the more we can kind of better the health of the planet in general, I think. And that's going to better all marines. It's going to just help all marine species.
Absolutely.
And us.
All species. All land and
all species.
And human.
Exactly. I agree.
Love it. Laurie, thank you for chatting sea turtles with me. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. This was definitely a good talk.
This episode is brought to you by you. Thank you to those of you who have become patrons of the So You Want to Be a Marine Biologist podcast. For less than the cost of a dive tank refill or a cup of coffee, you can help keep the podcast episodes coming. There's also some fun bonuses for patrons, so be sure to check those out at patreon.com/marinebiolife. That's patreon.com/marinebiolife. Thank you for listening to today's show. I'd love to hear any insight you've gleaned. Leave a comment in the show notes or send me an email over at marinebio.life. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a review and, of course, share with your friends. If you want more resources for ocean news, including conservation topics and careers, plus personal insight from me that I just don't share anywhere else, join me at marinebio.life and sign up for email updates. Keep after your dreams and making waves in your community. One person can make a difference. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll catch you next time on the So You Want to Be a Marine Biologist podcast.